Hey guys, it's Paradise, and just when we thought we were finished finding all of that juicy latest information for Monster Hunter Wilds following the behind closed doors presentation that certain lucky content creators and media got to experience, we've done some extra research and found some specific gameplay changes and expanded on information for a bunch of really cool and impactful gameplay mechanics. So after going over so many articles, videos, translating things, and collecting information, we now have even more new things to share with you guys. Please do remember that we weren't invited to see this behind closed doors demo, so we're going off of other people's impressions and a literal ton of information across articles and news sources. We're doing our best to translate these and bring them to you, and we wish we had actual new footage to show, and we're trying to make the best content possible, but we only have the trailers to work with, so please do forgive the B-roll and trailers. We're just using what we have access to and trying our best out here. Now let's jump into the specifics for these impactful changes to the gameplay with news on weapons, armor, and combat in Monster Hunter Wilds. One small but very interesting mechanic change is how materials from monster part breaks will work. The Japanese channel Takie expands on what they saw when a monster's part was broken in the demo and how it is now different. They said, there's a new feature where breaking a monster's part immediately grants the rewards. The material icon was displayed alongside the part break notification. With this feature, you no longer need to end a quest and return to base to check the part break rewards or guess the drop rates for materials. It's a significant improvement in efficiency, allowing you to continue hunting without unnecessary interruptions. So from this, it looks like the end screen rewards for part breaks and even just straight up materials might no longer be a thing. Instead, you instantly get the rewards as you break a monster's part, and I'm assuming this also applies to when you defeat a monster, the materials just pop up as you carve it. We aren't sure exactly how this impacts the rarity of certain items and the shiny drops that you sometimes get on the floor when hunting, but the fact that the hunts end seamlessly and no longer require you to travel back to the village, it's possible that the end hunt screen may no longer be present, hence these types of rewards instantly popping up on the screen as it happens when you break the part. So the flow of hunting and getting your rewards for defeating a monster is definitely going to be different. We know that you can stay out in the field after beating a monster, so you can just simply move on to the next thing without any traveling or load screens. But we also know that carving is far more detailed, where you actually stand on top of the monster's body instead of going through it. So there's a lot of changes to the way that a hunt is completed, as well as the process of getting materials off of a monster. One of the most intriguing things about Wilds to me is the fact that you can now take two different weapons out with you on a hunt. Now we already knew this, and we already know that you can swap between those weapons on your new secret mount. It's important to note that it can be any two weapons, even two of the same, but it seems like there is an incentive to take two different weapons, as the devs have explained the idea of taking different weapons with different damage types, like a slashing weapon and a blunt weapon, allowing for tail cuts and monster stuns in the same hunt by the same hunter. However, this does bring up a massive concern for me regarding our armor sets and our skills. Many of the weapons in Monster Hunter do often have specific skills that greatly improve their potential, their playstyle, and even their combos in some instances. For example, just think about Power Prolonger and Focus for the Switch Axe, or something like Quick Sheath for the Longsword, or even the bowgun specific skills that only work for bowguns like Recoil Down. And that's not including things like Offensive Guard that obviously only work on a weapon that can guard. Many of these skills can be quite impactful to your main weapon's performance, but many of them don't cross over to other weapons very easily. So initially, when I looked at this, I thought you might not be able to take two of any weapon out with you because your armor set may have a bunch of skills on it that once you change weapon will just become redundant. Well, from the 4gamer.net Japanese article, we know a little bit about how they plan to tackle this. They asked Tokuda, this time you can carry two weapons, but with the current armor system, it's difficult to prepare skills that correspond to two weapons. Tokuda said, the format that hunters can equip one type of armor will remain the same this time. I think everyone is wondering what will happen with two weapons equipped. We're planning to make adjustments so that the functions in this area will be expanded on as the game progresses. I don't want to give you details yet, but know that we're reviewing the skill system itself and ultimately are aiming to be able to play with two weapons. So it looks like our armor set in some way is expanded on as you progress in the game. Could this be additional skill slots that open up later on, or do the later game armor sets have overlapping skills or entirely new systems? We don't exactly know, but the fact that they are reviewing the skill system itself suggests that the way armor sets work, or even the way that skills work, could be completely revamped in order to support two different types of weapons, hopefully without having skills that don't overlap and kind of become dead space, making your mix set redundant. Speaking of the two weapon swapping system, it's going to be interesting to see exactly how this works and evolves as you progress in the game. Currently, it's only confirmed that you can swap weapons while mounted on your secret. However, we know from a Games Radar interview that Tokida said, as the story progresses, players will be able to gain access to new skills and features that will tie into this new system of using two different weapons at the same time. He then gives us a little tease and says we're just starting to reveal information. So that pretty much confirms there will be additional skills or features related to the weapon swapping. Could this mean additional ways to swap weapons, or actual weapon swapping skills that you execute? We really like the idea of using our new hook slinger to switch weapons while grounded instead of while mounted. Imagine doing a sort of Spider-Man web sling to pull the weapon off of the secret to change it. In Monster Hunter Rise, we actually had switch skills, which you could switch out and give you entirely new moves. Since we know switching weapons is a thing, and Tokida has confirmed new skills or features, maybe in some shape or form, switch skills will make a return. I also really like the idea that there might be special skills that combine weapons together and seamlessly let you swap or use them together in some way. For example, imagine holding the dual blades and doing a spine dash on a monster, then seamlessly landing on your secret into a weapon swap as some kind of special new skill. But what do you think these new skills or features could be in relation to the weapon swapping mechanic? It's also been mentioned across various previewers that the time it takes to defeat a monster and the rough difficulty of them is more similar to World than Rise. And to help us with this, we have the new wounding system and focus mode, which is a mechanic that allows for more easy aiming and positioning with your weapon, while the wounding system is a way for you to deal more damage to a monster. It's good to know that the focus mode is in no way needed or required for both causing the new wound system and for just general gameplay. Another interesting thing about this new wounding system is that unlike the clutch claw tenderizing in Monster Hunter World Iceborne, this new wound system can be inflicted on a monster with your weapon attacks, turf war damage between monsters, and even environmental damage like shooting rocks to fall onto monsters. So it seems like any damage source can cause a wound if the damage is focused on an area of a monster where a wound can appear. These wounds will basically be created after enough damage is dealt to a specific body part, and then you can keep damaging them to get bonus damage and eventually pop the wound, even with regular attacks. However, in an interview, Tokida confirmed that if you use the new focused weak spot attack, which seems like it will be a new weapon move for each of the weapons, you will cause massive damage to a monster and a special follow-up attack, which wasn't expanded on, but could possibly be a topple, a trip, or a new clash attack like we saw at the end of the trailer, where the Greatsword Hunter jams his weapon in the Doshiguma's mouth. Interestingly, it's been mentioned across Japanese Twitter users that you can execute a weak point focus attack in-game by pressing the R1 button. This is cool to know because in Monster Hunter World, the R1 button was a way to dash as well as draw and sheath your weapon. So it might no longer do that, meaning if you use R1 a lot in your Monster Hunter World fights, you might need to unlearn that muscle memory if it is going to change in Wilds. Another cool detail is something extra about the barrel bombs. We have previously mentioned that barrel bombs can be rolled, but they could also be thrown and picked up. From this Japanese content creator's video about the live gameplay footage viewing session, they've confirmed that you can reposition barrel bombs that you've already placed out on the ground. They said, unbelievably, the barrel bombs have become incredibly realistic objects. But what does this mean? Until now, you could just place them, and you could even pass through them. But now they can be held, rolled, or thrown. This is a big change. So just like how traps can now be picked up and refunded, it seems like you can pick up your barrel bombs as well as rolling them and throwing them. Honestly, this change to various items that you deploy out mid-hunt is a very nice quality of life improvement. A very random side note that I just wanted to point out, cooking has also been confirmed that it will not be live action, it will be CG, which I honestly don't mind, but it's just an interesting fact. And then we have a little more detail about how each of the weapons that were shown in the demo have changed, as well as some overall gameplay changes. It sounds like the philosophy for the weapon reworks in Monster Hunter Wilds is all about taking a step back from the highly dynamic and often flashy combat mechanics seen in Monster Hunter Rise. Instead, they're focusing on making the weapons feel more substantial, grounded, and true to their original forms. This involves simplifying certain animations and then emphasizing the weight and impact of each attack. When Fujioka was asked about hunters getting stronger every year and if they've changed the difficulty, he said, "As a developer, we believe that the main focus of combat in the Monster Hunter series is to judge your actions while carefully watching the monster's movements. Even if new elements are added, we're developing the game so that this concept does not collapse. In Monster Hunter Wilds, monsters have become much more threatening due to the changes in the environment and traits like swarming, so these handy new features are a way to help deal with the new threats that players face in battle." Perhaps the most interesting mention here is the swarming mechanic being possible, and we kind of saw this in the trailer where a Chatacabra is being swarmed by smaller monsters, but it seems like the player will also get swarmed when attacking a pack of monsters, hence the focus on luring monsters away from one another. It definitely adds a layer of strategy to hunting, where you now need to account for the fact that monsters, when in a pack, essentially have backup if they're grouped together. Furthermore, it's important to note that mounted combat, while it is confirmed, it is not fully implemented in the sense of it being used as a way to actually hunt monsters. Instead, it is simply used as a way to lure monsters or do special actions. Tokuda confirmed in an interview that weapons are designed to actually deal damage while on the ground, not while mounted, and mounted weapons don't support all of their special actions. So with all of this, we can expect more slow, impactful, and weighty combat, which will be the focus for Wilds, and I believe many players that enjoyed Monster Hunter World have basically been asking for this, so they should be happy. But on that note, do remember we do have this new mount, which is somewhat similar to the Palamute in Rise, but expanded on, so in a way it's kind of a middle ground, just without all of the wirebug shenanigans. Let's go through a top level of the weapon changes from the previewers' impressions. The Greatsword specifically has been changed to reduce any unnecessary flourishes and make it feel like every swing really counts, so each weapon feels heavier and more targeted. The Heavy Bowgun's recoil has apparently been made more realistic, and they've made adjustments to it, which sounds like they've reduced the amount of ammo types available in an effort to balance its power and its versatility. For the Dual Blades, we did mention it in our past videos, but this is getting a new Blue Demon mode that focuses on evasion, making sticking to a monster much easier. The attack animations have also been altered to be more precise and agile, which does sound awesome. But that new evasion mode might sound disappointing to some, as we all love to just go out and focus on raw damage. But we'll have to see how it's implemented before passing judgment. The previewers seemed very impressed overall, so a closer look is definitely warranted. But then we have the Longsword, which has been altered to feel more deliberate and impactful. We know the Helm Breaker is making a return with an additional finisher on the end, and there might even be a new stance offering an alternative way to build key levels. On top of this, attacks that use the key levels have been refined. Overall, the impressions are that the weapon's visuals and audio feedback has improved, making each hit feel more impactful and satisfying to pull off. And to be honest, if there's one thing I want out of Monster Hunter, it's satisfying and visceral weapon attacks with feedback. On a side note, we already know that mounting has returned, as we've talked about this before, where Tokuda basically instantly mounted a monster with the first jump attack off of his secret. However, we've also seen comments saying that ledged mount attacks are also back, and some in the Japanese demo got to see the Dual Blades doing a mount attack off the secret. So mounting is going to be more of a thing, just like it was in World, which I'm very happy about, as I loved going for those mounts in Monster Hunter World. So what do you think of all of this? Tell us your thoughts down in the comments. We'd love to hear your guys' opinion as the community, and make sure to subscribe because you know we're going to have you covered as and when we find out more information.